I've always believed that one of the best ways to learn any software package is just to really get in there and start doing something. So while we still have a little bit to explain, I want to show you something so that you can kind of get an idea of how the system works. So first thing I'm going to do is just create some basic geometry. And what we're going to do is go here to the Model tab, and you can see we've got all our primitives right here. Well, there's a few ways to create this. Now, before I do that, I need to talk about items. So over here on the right is the Items tab. And in there is everything associated with your scene. Up here at the top, you have an untitled and a little clapboard. And what that means is that is your scene that is untitled. It means it's not been saved yet. Of course, you can save it with the name untitled, but I doubt you would do that. And when you do that, of course, would change. And there is a blank mesh item. Now, what that is, I want you to think of this the right way. This is a container for an object. It's not an actual object, it's a container for an object. So in this view, you will have everything associated with your scene. A light, a camera, and objects, of course, which in this case is a mesh item. But in addition to that, if you go to the Add Item list, there are all kinds of things you can add now. We can add replicators, of course, like we have been before, but there's forces, and there are particles, and there are procedurals, and there are volumes, and a lot of the new things that came with 601. So all of those, when you add those to your scene, will show up in your item list. So what we want to do in order to create an object is have a blank mesh. And there's always one there by default. And if I select the camera, you can see that it's kind of ghosted. That little blue box, that represents an object layer, and it's just kind of ghosted, which means there's nothing in it. So if I go here just simply to a box, as soon as I select that, what's going to happen is down here underneath, you're going to actually see some properties. So there's not necessarily a properties panel that pops up. It just shows up right underneath. So you click on it to turn it off, click on it to turn it on. Pretty easy. Same with the ball, same with a disc and a cone and a torus and so on. Okay, so all the properties for those are going to appear. This process works throughout Modo, so keep that in mind. For instance, if I select the camera, and you can see down here is the Properties tab. When I select the camera, camera properties pop up with, what's this? More tabs down here on the right, so don't ignore those. Select a directional light, properties for that come up. When we jump into shading and texturing, when we select a material, properties appear automatically underneath. Okay, so whenever you're looking for the controls for a particular item, be it an object, a light, a camera, select it and look underneath. One simple way to work. Okay, so let's go back to our mesh item layer. We'll select a box. Now, in order to create a box, obviously, just click and drag. Well, notice that when I do this, I get kind of a flat object. It's not really a box, is it? Well, these tools up in the top right, if you click and hold your mouse down, you can rotate around. Click and hold on this one, you can move, and click and hold on this one, you zoom. Now, a lot of people, let me do this again. There you go. A lot of people want to click and then just drag in the interface, and that is not how you do it. You click and hold on those buttons, and they always live up there, so you never have to worry. This little arrow, while I'm talking about it, lets you change this viewport to anything that Modo has to offer, but don't do that. I'll show you what you can do instead before you start messing up your screen here. Now, with this flat object, it's not really a box, so if you look at all the handles that are there, anything with an arrow is a translation object. So if I click and hold on the green, I can move it up and down. The blue is the Z, forward and back, and the red is the X, left and right. But then there's squares on the ends, again matching the colors, and that allows me to change the scale. And you can see over here in the cube properties, that's what's happening. Well, how do I get some depth? Well, depth would need to be this way, so I'll grab the red square because that is my size. The handle, the arrow, is actually my transition, my position for that. So we've just created a cube. To accept it, to keep it, just click on the cube tool and turn it off. Now, if you decide to change this, don't click the cube again and start drawing again. It doesn't work that way. Okay, so you have to set up those initial parameters if you want something very specific right at the beginning. That doesn't mean you can't manipulate this later or change it or move it later. But if you want to start out in a very specific way, make sure you set up the numerics. Now I just did it interactively, but let me cut this away real quick. So if I want to do something very specific, let's click the box tool again, and we'll pull up the panel here just by clicking and dragging right on the end. And let's say you want position to be 0, size to be maybe 2 meters, and I'm hitting just 2 and then the tab key. And then we want some segments in it, so it has a little more depth that we can use for manipulating it in some way. And we'll do maybe 6 on all sides, and we'll leave radius alone. And we hit apply. Now you get this perfect cube. Okay, so we just use numerics rather than interactively drawing it out. And we have a perfect cube perfectly centered on our 0, 0 axis. Now X, Y, and Z, I hope you know. X is left to right. Z is forward and back, which you can see right back there. And of course Y is up and down. So Y is up and down, Z is forward and back, and X is left to right. Always represented by green, and let me put my handle on here. Green is up and down, blue is forward and back, and red is left and right. So just keep that in mind. All right, so another way to make a box has to do with how you control these with your modifier keys. If you hold the shift key, notice that a plus comes up on all of these primitives. Now if you look over here, we still have a blank mesh layer, but with a plus, with the shift key, when I click that, a perfect 1 meter cube is added to the scene, and notice that a new mesh item is created automatically for me, leaving that blank one behind. That's what holding down the shift key and adding one of those does. Hit the A key and you can see that it's exactly 1 meter in size. And how do I know that? Well, down here in the bottom right is my grid space. So it says right now that based on my view, each grid is 100 millimeters in size. That's this little grid right here. So look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And of course I'm counting wrong, but notice that there's 5 on this side and 5 on this side. So that little grid space in there are 100 millimeters, which means the larger square is 1 meter. And of course it's halfway over, so it's 1 meter. All right, so that's one way to create. To get rid of this, I can right click on it and select delete. Notice now without a blank mesh selected that these are kind of grayed out. No active mesh in the scene. What does that mean? It means I need to select a mesh in order to create one of these. The other way to do an object, to create an object, is hold the control key. When you do that, you get these ruler type handles here. And what those are, that represents a unit primitive. So I'll select that. What that does is essentially the same as holding the shift key, but notice it created the object within that selected mesh layer rather than creating an entirely new mesh layer like the plus key. That also does two things. It adds it if I just hold it and click, but if I select it, then hold control and click and drag, I can draw out a perfect unit primitive right in my interface. But before I turn off the tool, I still have control over making some shape changes, some segment changes, and so on. So very interactive, very easy. And of course, the same works for all these other tools. Select a tool, hold the control key, perfect unit primitive. Hold the shift key, click, it adds a new mesh layer altogether, named whatever it is, in this case cylinder, and puts the others in a background layer. Okay. You also know that a background layer is always black outline by default. You can change that in Modo by pressing the O key, and we're going to do this often going to this visibility section. The O key is your viewing and shading, and if you haven't used Modo before, just move your mouse over and this goes away. So if you do that accidentally, don't think you did something. Just press the O key again. As soon as you move your mouse, it goes away. And again, it's all about workflow with Modo so that you don't have to go in and click a close button. It's not a panel that pops up that you have to click close. It just does it for you. There's a number of new sections and options in here, which we'll just cover as we need them as we go through the course. You'll be able to see replicators now in your interface. There is the topology mode in here showing weight maps as well. But what I really want to show you right now is your inactive meshes option. This has always been there, but it's very important. This means the inactive meshes, means the ones not selected, are wireframe visibility. Well, that's the one not selected over here. So now the cylinder not selected, it's a black wireframe. We'll select the cylinder, the other ones we made are black wireframe. So press the O key again, change that inactive mesh to flat shade. And what that means is those things back there are flat shaded. Do it again. You can always go same as active mesh. So whatever you're working on, whatever shading it is, they'll all be the same. And that's really good if you understand the layers and items and you know what you're doing. And then this version, which is invisible, and this is I like to consider this an advanced mode, because if things are hidden from scene, it is very easy to forget about them or accidentally do something. So you got to be really aware that you have this on. And what this basically does is automatically, it's like a solo mode. If you guys ever use Lightroom, Adobe Lightroom, you can turn on solo mode for the panels. And when one panel is open, the other's closed and vice versa. Kind of the same idea. When one mesh is selected, the other mesh is not visible. Great if you got a huge scene. Okay, so for us, we're going to do the same as active mesh. All right, so really simply creating primitives, not very hard at all. Let's go to File, Close All. I know you guys know this. It's all just basic. Basic, but we have to do it. Necessary evil. Okay, let's talk about a few more tools. I'm going to jam this all in here into one video. The Deform tab allows you to deform things. Now, I'm not going to, in this course, talk about how these tools are created. I've always done that before, and there's so much to cover that we're just going to tell you this is the twist, this is the bend, this is how it works. I'm not going to tell you about the math behind it. I'm not going to tell you that it's basically a combination of other tools put together, which I just did. All right, so I'm going to turn on twist, and you notice all these crazy handles come up, and it confuses people all the time. I do a lot of training in person at a lot of companies throughout the year, and they get very confused by all these, and it's really not so difficult as soon as you know what's going on. This guy right here, this little necktie, it's fat on one end, narrow on the other. What that is a fall off, and it is on by default with this particular tool. And if you move your panel up, you can see linear fall off. That's this guy right here. Okay, if I go and choose twist like this, I actually can make a very kind of fun, cool shape. Now I'm using a trackpad on a laptop, so it is a little more difficult to do this, but I'm doing it. And what that is allowing me to do is basically rotate, but because of this fall off command, it's placing more on one end, more of that rotation, and less on the other. That's all the fall off means. So where that little necktie is narrow, there's less, and where the necktie is fatter, there's more. Okay, I can change the axis of how I want things rotated. And let me just rotate it again. See how that front side, there's more rotation here, less here. Now watch what happens. What's great is that these tools are interactive. So I can very easily just click on this guy. Of course, I just moved my rotation axis. There we go. And so now when I slide this around, let's do this end instead. You can see that we'll have just rotation on that fat end like that. Anyway, but just using a fall off with the twist command, let me pull this back down here. Okay, bend, same kind of thing, just click to activate the tool. Okay, and we're going to use bend. It confuses a lot of people, but we'll use that throughout the course. Okay, push commands, not going to go through every one of these, but push will just kind of give you a little nice fatten up. So make it simple, primitive. Come down and start playing with some of these tools and see how they work. And the way Modo does it is lets you turn on a tool, click to activate, and then use it. Click the tool to turn it off. Okay, very simple. Another very important thing, which I'm going to talk about here, is vertices, edges, and polygons. Okay, every object is made up of points, or also called vertices, and a vertex is just a point like this. See, there's 4 points right there. Those 4 points are connected by edges, which are these guys. Those edges then make a polygon, which is that guy. Okay. One of the most important things in Modo that was put in here right from the beginning was very nice selections. And what that means is I can double click to select everything, click right off of it to deselect. I can go to edge mode, double click on an edge and it goes all the way around the entire loop. Maybe I'll select a loop this way. Then maybe I can go here to, oh, I don't know, bend or vortex or twirl, and I can actually just twirl or move or just do something to that particular selection. Even just a simple move. Turn off the move tool, click a little blank area, and I deselect it. Same goes for verts. I can just click 2 in one particular area, and then I can press the L key, which gives me a loop. And it loops all the way around. And then I can choose a tool and rotate. Okay, now there's different ways to rotate, and we'll talk about that with the work plane in just a little bit. But right now, this rotation is lining up to my world axis. And where's that world axis? Well, take a look down here. That work plane represents my world. So you'll notice that it's not aligning to the object. I'm going to talk about all of that in the next video. But with this selection, I can press the up arrow or the down arrow, and you'll see my selection go away. Okay. You can, let me do it with polygons so you can see it a little clearer. Select 2 of these, press the L key, and it finishes that selection for me. And with the right mouse, I can just slide that selection around. Left mouse goes back. If I come over and I select 2 of these again, and then I just press the up arrow, I can select all the way around, or the down arrow, deselect. Shift right arrow, I can add to my selection, and by the same token, shift down arrow, I can deselect. Okay, so just really easy ways to do selections. And again, we're going to put that into practice throughout the course, so don't worry about studying and understanding that all immediately. You've got materials over here, which you can just simply click on an object. Now, it doesn't seem like a big deal now, but when you've got a very complex scene with, let's say, a desert and cactus and trees and sky, and you want to know what that little surface is right back there because something's wrong with it, you can choose materials and click on it, and then that material will show up automatically selected in the shader tree. All right. All of these are called component modes. When we go to item mode, that means we're actually working with one of the items in the item list, one of the first things I talk about in this video. Okay, so it's a little confusing at first when to work with items and when to work with polygons, but it has a lot to do with your action centers and how you're moving things and their orientation in 3D space. So, for instance, animating, you're going to want to work in item mode, but manipulating the shape, we're going to work in polygon mode. Okay, so just keep that in mind, and it'll make sense as we start working through things. All right, so just a simple usage video, a little bit long, but get you kind of through the basics. Next video, I want to talk about action centers and work planes, and we'll go from there.